Welcome to the Strength Coach Collective, a podcast brought to you by Two Brain Business. We are here to advance the strength and conditioning coaching community by bringing you a wide range of experts in the field. You can join our group at strengthcoachcollective.com. For today's episode, I'm your host, Kenny Markwardt. I'm joined today by Jason Khalipa and MDV. Jason is the founder of NCFIT. He's CrossFit Level 4, CrossFit HQ Affiliate Council, former CrossFit HQ seminar staff. MDV is the Chief Fitness Officer at NCFIT. He's a former seminar staff member as well, and a former gym owner. So NCFIT just released their 2025 programming outlook, which outlines an entire year of their program design. We're going to use that as a centerpiece to discuss how coaches can do this on their own with their groups and their clients. You can follow along with this in a PDF in the show notes. So first of all, thanks guys for joining me. You guys are monsters in the industry. We appreciate you being here and bringing your voices to this conversation. So let's get going. I think that it's super helpful for coaches to understand how this happens. Like, how do you go from an avatar or a client or a group of clients and a blank piece of paper and plan out their entire year?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a pretty layered and deep question. You know, it didn't just happen overnight. This is something that's probably a career in the making for both Jason and myself. Jason and I found CrossFit both around the same time and around 2006, right, Jay? 2005, 2006. We both started coaching CrossFit around the same time as well. We spent a similar amount of years on seminar staff. Obviously, Jason had a much more decorated CrossFit Games career than than I had. But we came to work together here at NCFIT about 7 years ago. And the NCFIT Collective, and now we refer to it as NCFIT Programming and Coaching Development, spawned out of the idea that we had a group of coaches, not only across Northern California, but across the entire world, that we wanted to connect and get them working on a similar sheet of music about what our intention was with the workouts that we were putting down on paper. And the whole system developed out of that kind of kernel of knowledge, or that kernel of an idea that we wanted to be able to disseminate information to get people working more cohesively, so that we knew that our coaches not only were talking about some of the things that we wanted them to talk about in these workouts and these movements, but that also that they were continuing their professional development, that these individuals, these talented young men and women were reading about the craft of coaching every single day, and not just going out there and kind of winging it. And that was the initial kind of spawning of the, like I said, the NCFIT Collective. Now, the Outlook document was kind of an evolution of that, where we sat down for ourselves and we were like, hold on, we are now putting these workouts down on paper, but do we have an adequate plan? Similar to how we were looking at coaching, we were giving coaches the plan about what we wanted them to go out, and in the micro experience, the day-to-day experience, what we wanted them to think about, what we wanted them to deliver. But then we had to turn the lens on ourselves and realize, okay, but are we doing our due diligence in creating a plan for the entire year? And one of the things that I've loved about CrossFit and functional training that has developed tangentially with CrossFit is the idea that variance can produce a really well-rounded athlete, right? CrossFit is constantly varied functional movements executed at a high intensity, and everybody understands functional movements. Everybody understands high intensity. Well, most people understand high intensity, but not a lot of people understand variance. And if you're not planning toward what your end state or targeted end state is, your variance can quickly become random, right? You're just taking inputs and you're hoping that you get the correct outputs. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to really bring to life variance in a way that was well-planned variance. So it's not just random. We have the intention of creating athletes who are really well-rounded and who live free and full lives outside of the gym. That means they're resilient against injury. That means they're very capable. That means they have a really well-rounded development of all 10 of the general physical and athletic skills. And we have a specific type of feel to our programming that we wanted to let not only our athletes know about, our coaches know about, but also all the gyms out there that subscribe to our programming We wanted them to know these things as well so they could be better educated to talk to their constituents. So we took a shot at creating the first Outlook document about 5 or 6 years ago. And the document, just like our programming service, our class plans, it's evolved to the present day state that it's in. And what you'll see if you download the Outlook document is you'll see our attempt at creating this roadmap for gym owners and coaches so that they can be better educated about where we're going in the programming. What is our intention to take the athletes along this path to get them to the outcome that we state, that well-rounded, free and full individual living outside of the gym, resilient to injury, well-rounded. And that's how we plan our year. We plan our year across 4 major phases. You could do it in other amounts of time, but 4 major phases. We've got monthly focuses. We've got benchmarks that are planned out against those focuses and against those phases. And then within each of those phases, obviously, we look at the month, we look at the week, and then we drill down all the way to the day. And that's how we consider planning in the NCFIT organization. We have our umbrella goal that we want to accomplish with our athletes. We go, okay, we got a year in which we're going to try to do this. How do you do that? Okay, let's look at the months. And then from the months, you look at the weeks, and from the weeks, you look at the days. And then you eventually get into each piece of the workout. And without it being too overwhelming, that's how you can create what we feel a really well-rounded year-long plan looks like.
Yeah, I love it. So it sounds like, the shotgun programming that they had advised against in level 1 that I remember 14 years ago or whatever. That's it. You guys have taken that to the complete opposite on a grand scale, right? It's not shotgun programming. It is very well laid out, very well thought out over a very long period of time. Tell me about, the variance. I totally agree. Like the variance can be interesting, but not all that effective if not done properly. So tell me about your thought process through that. It looks like,
variance is very effective. Variance is very effective. It's proved to be effective by all of the amazing athletes and the level of performance that CrossFit has put out. Now, I think that there's a big difference between variance and randomness. And then there's a big difference between random and then like wantonly random or reckless, right?
Sure.
So everything exists on a spectrum when you're considering these things. The way that we look at it, like somebody could look at our version of the Outlook document and go, that's way too planned. That's not varied enough. And I could see how they could have that argument. But at least what we're looking at here is we're still expressing variance through our programming. The athletes are still getting a wide exposure to a wide variety of stimulus, loading, time domain, modality, equipment, all of these things, volume, total volume, repetition, all this stuff. We're still exposing them to a wide variety of stimulus. We're just doing so against a framework that we've created so that we stay on track towards our goals, so that we don't lose our way, so that we don't get 2 months into the programming and go, oh, we haven't done this type of workout in X number of weeks or X number of months. And you have these glaring holes or these big biases. That's what we're really trying to avoid here. We're trying to avoid the major pitfalls of programming functional training, which would be your variance is no longer variant. It's completely random. You now have these major biases in your programming because you don't have checks and balances against it. And maybe you've lost your way going this weird tangential direction because you don't have the end state in mind anymore. So that's what we're constantly coming back to. We're constantly coming back to the fact that we want to create this type of end state athlete, and the parameters in which we measure that against are the ones that we lay out in the Outlook document. So I think variance is incredibly effective. I think when it's not done right and it kind of crosses the threshold to random and then wantonly reckless and random, you have the ability for it to be a little bit less effective, more likely, than injurious. Injury is tough to come by because functional movement's inherently safe, but less effective, I think, in reaching what your end state would be for sure.
Sure. And it looks like you guys have focuses over those time periods. And does that help with that, the variance versus randomness versus like consistency and achieving those goals? Like having some focuses throughout those time periods so you can assure that you're checking those boxes, but also keeping it true to what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's a big part of it for us is just laying out like how do we get there? how do we get there? We have all these things, and that can be the overwhelming part about programming CrossFit workouts and programming in a CrossFit system, especially on a long timeline. It's much easier to program one CrossFit workout because you could literally do anything, right? Like you could literally write down anything and you could defend it and be like, okay, cool. Like this is a great workout. But then when you're looking at, okay, well, wow, I'm going to have this athlete hopefully for X number of months, X number of years. Am I bringing them closer to what the stated goal of the program is? And I told you what the stated goal of the NCFIT program is. We're creating well-rounded, injury resilient, free and full athletes living their lives outside of the gym, healthy individuals. That's what we're always chasing. So when we create this Outlook document, we're creating the framework to look at all these different variables, all these movements, modalities, major movement patterns, loading patterns, volume, time domain, all this stuff that if you start to think about it, it's a lot of variables to consider. We try our best to touch them all, and then we put the most weight on the things that we think are the most impactful to get to our end state. And then we touch the other things on the ends of the spectrum, of course, the very, very long, the close to 45, 50-minute workouts. We do some of those. We do the very, very short, the sub 5-minute, sub 10-minute. We do some of those, but we're making our money. We're doing our thing in what we believe is the most impactful time domain, volume, repetition, and that's how we get to our end state.
Got it. So talking about so you do have a strength cycle. You have, it looks like about an 7-week strength cycle from January to February. You guys are doing front squat, deadlift. So there is some of the repetition in there. Mm-hmm. You're doing it's maybe not totally periodized, but it is in a cycle there. So is that something you're trying to progressively over? Like, how does that work for your cycles there?
Yeah, I'll answer this one pretty quickly. And then I definitely want Jay's opinion on just how CrossFit programming, in his opinion, has kind of changed and evolved over the years, because he was a major factor in getting to the place that we're at now. But we do linear strength cycles in our program. And if you look at historic.com CrossFit traditional programming, you're probably not going to see linear strength cycles in there, right? You have a much more GPP approach to strength, which means on one day you could see a 3-3-3-3-3 power clean, and then 2 or 3 days later you could see a 5x5 back squat. Great exposure, both fantastic movements, both great rep ranges, both have a tremendous amount of impact for the athlete. I'm not knocking it. But one thing that I do know is that athletes who are paying to go to a gym, who want to generally get stronger and more capable, they might need more consistent exposure, or might enjoy more consistent exposure through things like occasional linear strength cycles, whether it's Wendler 5-3-1, or whether or not you're going to build to a heavy 5 rep and you're going to take them along some sort of 6-week journey to get there. We do a balancing act between traditional GPP strength exposure, which would be that more kind of varied, you don't really know what you're going to get into, but it's going to line up to where we want to take you, and linear strength progression, where we say, okay, this is definitely what we're doing for the next 6 weeks. You know what to expect. You're going to see squatting 1 time a week, and you're going to see deadlifting or back squatting 1 time a week, whatever the strength cycle is. We lay it out at the beginning. We let them know during this time of the year, you're going to see a linear strength cycle. And I think it's a good balance. But Jay, I wanted to get your take on just how you've seen the programming change, and where gym owners might be at currently versus where they might have been at back when we started in 2006, 2007.
So look, I mean, I'll just say like this episode is going out to coaches, going out to owners. I think the most important thing that MDV was talking about is having a plan. And I think that where things are different now in the industry compared to where they used to be is that you need to have a plan to be competitive. You need to have a plan to really reach your potential, and you got to know where you want to go. I think that early on in the days, it was work capacity across broad time and middle domains. It was high intensity functional movements, constant, and you started thinking about these things. But then I think as a gym owner, you got to start thinking about, okay, what am I really trying to do for our members? And for us, living freely and fully outside the gym is really important. So what does that mean, right? Like, narrowing down, what is my goal as a gym owner, as a coach? What is the culture trying to be set? I want people to go do things with their kids. I want them to get outside the gym and be able to do things. So we need a program that allows them to do that and to be in alignment with that. So I think any coach listening, it's like whether you're individual design, group training, gym owner, it doesn't matter. What is the goal? What is your annual plan? How do you break that down? And then how does it go down and be executed on a day by day and hour by hour basis? And I think the way that it's changed in the industry over the years is that back in the day, we just didn't think so long term. We also didn't think about like what the application was for outside the gym. It was very much so about getting fitter in the gym to be fitter in the gym. But I think that as the industry's evolved, we need to start taking into consideration, these people need to be fit for life. They need to be able to go do things. And if me trying to push an athlete or have them spend a bunch of time on a skill set that maybe doesn't transfer as well outside the gym, maybe they'd be better off on one of our linear progressions. Not only that, but it's also inspiring and motivating when you hit bigger numbers you've ever hit before. So that's what we're doing, is we're looking at the last almost 20 years of owning and operating gyms, and we're narrowing it down in terms of what we're finding is the most effective way for our athletes to train. We're putting that out in an annual plan that's super well designed. Any gym owner, any coach listening, they should just take ours and they should use that as a great framework and then follow that up by utilizing our programs, because we take the guesswork all out of it because we have a team that's doing all of it. So that'd be, I guess, my long-winded way of saying, like, know where you want to go, what's your North Star, create a plan against it, and then break it down into annual, quarterly, monthly, hourly. And if you don't have that time or bandwidth, or perhaps what I'm saying to you just seems very overwhelming, then just utilize ours and then express it in your own way.
Yeah, I love it. How do you quantify the things that you're talking about? So again, this is not necessarily just for CrossFit folks. And so in terms of like quantification of achieving those goals of free outside of the gym, to be able to do everything you want to be able to do, to live life, how are you quantifying those things and demonstrating success for your people?
Well, I think participation is key, right? So we want to look at average attendance. We want to make sure that those numbers are going well, because if people are coming in, they're probably achieving the goals that we want. We're looking at our attrition rate. That's really important as well. So like, I think before you'd be looking at PRs and numbers. I think those are important for sure. But I think for us, we're also looking at what's our membership, what's our revenue, what's our retention, what's our participation, how our class is, what's the average attendance per member per week. And I believe that if someone is coming in on a regular basis to us, they're going to be able to live freely, being able to go do whatever they want to go do outside the gym and to express their fitness in a variety of ways. That's the way I look at it. I mean, I'm sure, of course, we want to look at metrics. We want to start tracking those things. But I think that at a high level, and MDV mentioned this, like living, what was it? You said pain free or injury free. Like we don't want people to come into the gym and go for a 1 rep max snatch to potentially injure themselves. We'd rather have them back off just a little bit or design a program just a little bit back so that they can go do stuff outside the gym. Because if you injure yourself in the gym, you can't do anything outside the gym. So we're looking at metrics like that in a really deep way.
Yeah, I mean, we specialize in CrossFit and functional training. So, anybody out there who's listening who's not in CrossFit or functional training, you might have a different litmus test, or you might have a different way that you measure success with your athletes. You might be a powerlifting coach, and the big three really are, the ones that squat, bench, and deadlift. You have to track those, or those lifts going up. You might be a bodybuilding coach, and physique and body fat and those types of things are what you're tracking as measures of success for your athletes, or whatever type of coach you are. As long as you have whatever your intended output is, and as long as you're looking at your athletes and generally are your athletes getting there, and you can look at, across the entire, whether it's entire gym, or if you have a entire group of people who you coach, or if you're just working with one athlete, you're looking to elicit feedback from those athletes. And for us, like Jason said, are athletes continuing to come to the gym? Are they showing up to the gym? Attendance is hugely important. Obviously, there's other factors involved in that. Life gets in the way, kids, family, whatever, tough time of year, holidays, all that kind of stuff matters. So, but generally, are we seeing people an adequate number of times per week and per month? Then also we're looking at how the athlete is feeling. are the athlete's numbers generally trending in the right direction? And it can't just be one workout in a vacuum. Hey, over the course of the past 3 months, generally, how are you feeling? Are you feeling like you're attacking these workouts better? Are your scores in the workouts generally getting better? And if those things are all moving in the right direction, you have the indication they're moving in the right direction, you're being successful, at least in the CrossFit model. That's where and how we measure success. Increase work capacity across broad time and modal domains. Fancy way of saying, generally, are you getting fitter? If you're approached by a workout or a workout is in front of you, and more often than not, you can accomplish the task and you can incrementally do it a little bit better, you're getting fitter. So that's like the long and short of CrossFit, how they measure fitness.
And Kenny, I'd add one more thing, for coaches listening, like, it's really important that your athletes are having fun and they're enjoying the workouts.
Yeah, for sure.
And a great way to look at that is your average attendance. Like, are people coming in once a week, 3 times a week? What's your attrition? And I think that if you look at your attrition, if it's more than 3%, what are you doing, right? You could have the best program in the world that's super curated, but if athletes aren't enjoying the workouts, if you're not coaching them in an effective way, then the retention is not going to be there and the consistency is not going to be there. And the results are never going to be life-changing because they're not coming in enough to do that. And for us at NCFIT, we really focus on workouts that not only are going to make a great impact on the members, but also make a great impact on your business. And they make a great impact on your business because they're fun, effective workouts that our coaches are delivering in a really unique way. And that's super important for us. So, if you're a coach listening and you haven't checked out our Coach Like a Pro program, right? Coach Like a Pro is a badass program that MDV and I do, or our session plans. Check them out because that's what's helped us, build successful gyms.
CrossFit's unique. I think a lot of community-based fitness businesses or boutique fitness businesses are kind of unique in the fact that, like, you care about your members showing up. Generally, you care about your members showing up, right? The big box gym model is a little bit different. You're looking for mass subscriptions, and maybe you're sitting there with your fingers crossed saying, I hope these people don't show up so I get less utilization of electricity or less usage of the equipment, or the peak hours aren't so cramped. Like, it's a different model. But like Jason was saying, in our model, the members we want them to come into the gym. So they have to enjoy their time there. So fun, enjoying the time is part of the equation for us. And the way that we look at fun, we're looking to give them workouts that are challenging for sure, that hit our goals, that make sure that they're eventually getting toward where we want to push them, but that also entertain the athlete in a way that it's not like always redundant. It's not always the same movements or the same patterns, or like, hey, there's thought to how the workout was laid out today and it makes sense in how it flows. One of the things that frustrates me the most about looking at a workout, not necessarily just if I don't agree with, maybe the loading, or I don't agree with, the movements that they chose, but if I don't agree with how the structure of the workout actually could go down in a group class environment, when I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, if you have 2,000 square feet and 10 to 15 athletes, you have this much equipment, how are you going to get this done? It doesn't get done. It's like a workout that was programmed by somebody sitting there who's never coached a class before. And that's, if we boil it down, that's what we want to avoid at all costs with every NCFIT workout. You never want the gym owner going, why would they do this to me? Like that. Of course, everybody's got a different setup, a different situation. Some people might have more equipment than less, more space, blah, blah, blah. But more often than not, we are programming workouts with also the gym owner and the experience of the athlete in mind.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a massive emphasis on making an enjoyable experience for the members so they attend, so they can do the process. Like, at the end of the day, if they do the process, they're going to get the outcomes. But if they don't enjoy the process, they're not going to do that. And so there's a massive, so both in the Coach Like a Pro program and through the execution of this plan, it sounds like that's a major emphasis. Am I following?
Yeah, for sure.
People in the gym, they'll see results, right?
That's spot on. If the proof is in the pudding, man. I mean, Jason, I'm sure, can give you stories of people who have driven multiple miles or even hours past other gyms to go to the NorCal CrossFit or NCFIT. And I can attest to the same. There's a lot of gyms out there. People have a lot of options for fitness. There's a ton of options that exist right on people's phones, right? So if they're not getting both sides of the equation from you, if they're not getting the results that they want, and they're also not getting the enjoyment out of what they do, and I'm talking about community-based fitness environments, they have an array of other options that they could go to in a moment's notice. They probably pass 2 or 3 on the way to your gym anyway. So it's one of those things that you could start thinking about, okay, I have to consider that in every athlete interaction that I have, right? And Jason was big on this for years. It's like, this could be the last ever. You have to renew your member with every single experience that you have with them, because you're one bad experience away from losing them. It's not an exaggeration. That really is the situation in the fitness business, in our opinion.
Yeah, I love it. So what I'd love to know so I think coaches get overwhelmed with program design, period. Like, I think it's hard. I think if a coach is working with an individual, like, yes, they can totally use this framework, and they can totally use, like, they can just individualize what you guys have here. But just to walk somebody through a process of this, how would you go about doing this? So you get a new individual client, you talk about their goals. Where do you go from here for a year?
Whoa. This is going to be a very layered question. There's a lot of variables here. So it depends heavily on the goals of the athlete and a realistic understanding of where they're at and how long realistically it might take to get them there, right? So if somebody comes to you who's 55 years old, they've never done a workout in their life, they're 60 pounds overweight, they can't squat below parallel, they can't put a 15-pound dumbbell over their head, and they're saying to you, I want you to design me a program to get me to the CrossFit Games in a year. It's like, okay, it's not realistic, might not be realistic to get to that level in a year from where we're starting. Now, maybe we can do some local competitions, we can get our feet. Like, these are the kinds of conversations you have to have with your athlete. Like, the goals obviously have to be realistic. So let's, I guess, in this hypothetical situation, let's say we have realistic goals with the athlete. You have to put a realistic time frame against those goals, or what your best estimate is. And of the individual clients that I've had in the past, you have to kind of find this balance between, all right, I need to expedite the results, but also get them there in what I think is like a realistic amount of time. Like, I think it's a little bit, I don't want to say immoral, but like, if you're just renewing your client sessions every single week and you never make progress towards their goal, and you're just simply relying on them to renew with you, I think that you have this kind of dilemma there about whether or not you're actually still continuing to do them a service by them coming in to see you. But neither here nor there. Ultimately, look at what the athlete's goals are. You, as the coach, should help guide them toward the goals, or at least be a sounding board for them to talk through the goals a little bit. I'm not saying dissuade them from the goals. I'm saying more so get a finite understanding of what they are, so that you can go back and make the best plan as possible. Then you have to look at how much are they willing to invest towards getting toward that goal, right? If somebody says, I only have the money to do a month's worth of sessions, you have to reframe the goals. This is why the conversation gets pretty layered around creating a plan like this. We're looking at our athletes, or we're hoping that our athletes will stay with us for this time frame. But even if they drop out after 6 months with us for some reason or another, they move or whatever, we want them to still get the benefit of the program within that 6 months. We still want to be able, maybe they didn't get all the way to the point that we wanted them to get to, but in CrossFit, it's kind of a constant moving target. You're never like fully there. You always are trying to push a little bit more on capability, a little bit more injury resilient, a little bit more on the 10 different physical and general skills. So, yeah, I would say coaches who are looking to do this, you have to really reflect, like I said, get as good of an understanding of your athlete's goals are. And then as good of an understanding of how much time and investment are they going to give you to get toward that goal. And then start to lay out a plan to get them there in stages and show them progress. So progress is super important, especially in the individual design towards a specific goal. You have to have these different benchmarks that you get to, that you say, hey, we accomplished this together, because then you can build off of that, and the athlete will gain a tremendous amount of confidence towards the next iteration of the goal. That would be how I would approach it. And then, of course, if you don't know how to do any of this stuff and the athlete is asking you, hey, I want to go from a really good 5K time to a really good marathon time in 10 weeks. And if you have the experience to do that, okay, get after it and do that. If you don't have the experience to do that, go out there and learn. Is this even possible? Can I do this with the athlete? And then if you don't feel confident in doing that, maybe refer them to somebody else who does have the confidence in doing that. I think that these are all really important aspects to the conversation about individual design for coaches. Knowing your own skill set and knowing what you're really, really good at, knowing what you can get athletes to accomplish is tremendously important. And then you have to have a line in which maybe you say no to people who might not be within that wheelhouse for you or too far outside your skill set. So if you're an Olympic weightlifting coach and this person comes to you and says, hey, I want to PR my 100-meter backstroke, you might not be the best coach for them, right? Like, that's an extreme example, but that's kind of what I would ask coaches to consider.
So on the topic where you mentioned something along the lines of like how much they're willing to invest and like their time frame of like their time horizon of when they expect this to happen. What I really love about this plan you guys have put together is that it demonstrates the year. Like I think it gets more buy-in. So I think for an individual client who says, hey, you're re-upping every session, or you have to resell them every time they come in, or they bought a 5-pack or whatever. Like, I think this framework of when somebody comes in, you say, listen, what would success look like for you in 1 year? I think you'd get a lot more buy-in if you were to outline what that year would look like, and then you can show them all the steps in which they're gonna take to get there, and at which juncture you're going to show them that progress. So I think you'd actually be able to get a lot more retention on your individual clients if you were to be able to do this in the beginning. Yeah, it's going to take some time investment, but my goodness, like, you will have people for the rest of their lives if every single year you sit down and say, hey, I know you want to do this. This is what we're going to do this year. This is what we're going to do this quarter. This is what we're going to do the next quarter. And then this is exactly how I'm going to show you along the way that we're getting you there, that will keep those people with you for as long as you could ever want them.
Yeah, I mean, I would generally agree with that. I think it heavily depends on, the athlete's goal. If the athlete is just trying to live a fitter life and they want to see constant improvement on certain things, and they have different events that they constantly want to do, then I think you can work towards that with an individual client very, very easily. But if an athlete has a very specific goal, like, hey, I want to run this race on X date, I think you should create a plan. And they come to you and say, I want to run this race on X date. You should create a plan to get the athlete in the best position to run the race on X date. And also, it would be great if after that they continued on with you. But the deal there, the handshake deal, is that this person's paying you for your time, your energy, your attention to create a plan that gets them to the best possible place at X date. And then beyond that, of course, you can have other conversations, but I think, making sure that the athlete's goal stays primary and not necessarily the idea of how do I keep this person as long as humanly possible, right? I think that there's a fine distinction there, but I would generally agree with you. If you present a plan to somebody and you show them delineated benchmarks, you have a much better opportunity to get them to stay within the system and make it all the way to the date than if you didn't.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like quantifying some of those, even if they're vague, like even if somebody says, hey, I just want to be able to pick up my grandkids for the rest of forever. I want to be able to go hikes with my grandkids. I want to be able to do all these things. Do you feel like quantifying those things, even if they are pretty general, and then continuing to show them results along the way? Like, it's not necessarily about keeping them. Like, it's not a transactional thing necessarily. It's a lifelong thing. But
maybe
it's a matter
about
of
two different. I think MDV's point is like, dude, if I'm getting ready for a jiu-jitsu tournament and I want to get a coach to help me ramp up for that, their priority is, hey, you have this pillar. I want to get you prepared. I'm going to crush you over the next 3 to 6 months. That's like a different individual with a different focus than the grandma who wants to be able to be fit and capable to lift up her grandkids 20 years from now. How do we achieve both of these things? They're different. With the first one, I'd be a lot more intentional and set up the benchmarks with this guy saying, hey, if you want to be ready for this event, we got to do this. With the grandma, it's like, dude, we got a distant horizon, right? Let's start making progress. Let's start putting on a plan where you're in here 3 days a week. Let's start making sure that we can get your deadlift up to, this level. And if you continue to do that over year and year, and if you could lift your grandkid today, well, as you get stronger and the kid gets bigger, we're probably going to be able to do that for a very long extended period of time. But I think just having those conversations, goal setting, and then creating a program specific for that, I think is the important thing, whether it's individual design or for the gym.
Yep.
But I think you guys you're talking about two different things.
No, I think it all comes back to goal setting. I think it's just the goal. You just have to deeply understand the goal of your client. And if the goal of the client is to work and to continue to work to have a free and full life, and they want to do sessions to add to that, then you should set them up for as much success, long-term success as possible, for sure. And you could show them, hey, this is where I think we could get in X number of months, in a year, in a couple of years of working together. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
Got it. Love it. You guys want to add anything else? You guys have a lot to offer for coaches and owners. Anything else you'd like to chat through here?
Yeah, I mean, Kenny, we've been in the game a long time. We have a lot to offer. I think Coach Like a Pro is a great program for anybody listening. I think this annual document that you're referring to, I think it's very specific for the gym owner. The gym owner then can translate that to its coaches, and the coaches can then disseminate that education, that information to members when they have questions. I think that's super important because then members feel like there's a plan. And if the members feel, whether they're individual design or whatever, people want to know that, hey, there's a plan, there's a method to where we're going. I think from a Coach Like a Pro perspective, I think if you're a coach out there and you feel like your development isn't where it needs to be quite yet, I would just ask yourself the question, like, when's the last time you got reviewed by a peer? When's the last time you got any feedback on the art that you're currently getting paid by? And if you're not getting any feedback, that's a great place to start, is have someone review your class. And that's one of the major concepts that we have through our program called Coach Like a Pro, where we have the structure set up so that someone can review you and give you really good feedback. And I think that it's unfortunate in our art because in many other industries, there's a feedback loop. But I think sometimes in our industry, there is no more feedback loop. You become a coach and then the feedback is gone. And obviously the responsibility is on the owner. And if you're the owner operator, then that responsibility is on you. If no one's giving you feedback, then you have to identify someone that can. Because how do you get better unless you're getting that feedback? So I would start there as like, if I could just summarize in one thing, it's like, if you're a coach out there and no one has formally or informally given you any feedback in the last 3 years, it'd be a great thing for you to do, because chances are there's areas of improvement. There's probably areas that you think you're really good at that you're maybe not as good at. There's probably areas that you might not think you're good at that you might actually be better than you think. And I think just getting that feedback is really important.
I think that's great. I think feedback is fantastic. We thrive on feedback, man. It's like one of the things I think it's the most important thing. If you're a coach out there, if you wanted to improve, just talking about the craft of coaching, literally with anybody, but ideally with other people who are in a similar role or a similar capacity, you definitely want other perspectives. But if you can talk to other coaches about the rigors of coaching, about issues that you had, about troubles or about successes or about, hey, I don't know how to do this, that's the number one thing that you could do for your development. The second thing that you can do for your development, I think, is to have a plan every single day before you go out and coach. And whether that means you're writing your own plan, you're looking at somebody else's and you're studying it, and then you're creating a distilled version of that for yourself, at least in the space that we operate in, having conversations about the craft of coaching and having a plan, super, super important. And, the last thing I want to say is, like, we obviously specialize in CrossFit, functional training, group style classes. That's what we do at NCFIT. We do a pretty damn good job of it. But, individual one-on-one training has become a bigger part of what we do for a lot of our staff members at our gym. And I think that there's fantastic opportunities out there for coaches who are in CrossFit and functional training to work one-on-one with athletes. And whether that's specific skill development or if that's specific targets for certain lifts, or if that's for nutrition, or if it's other lifestyle related things about habit stacking or creating a system for an athlete to get to the gym on time and dial in their nutrition, whatever those things are. Or if it's more long-term about, hey, I'm really enjoying classes, but I also really like working with you one-on-one, and I'd like to do once or twice a week with you individually, where you design a workout for me and give me feedback. I'd like to do that on the long term. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful addition to the journey of CrossFit group classes. And I want coaches out there to thrive and be successful. And our goal is to help give them the tools and the information to do so.
Yeah, that's a great way to finish. Thanks. I think the continual refinement of coaching is what's going to keep this industry going and successful and thriving. And thanks for all that you guys do for that.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot. Remember, you can join us at the strengthcoachcollective.com. Thanks for listening.